because we're running late. Only
Where are they? What happened to them?
yeah. Oh, hey
Yeah.
everyone.
Hi,
Well,
guys.
XR Talk.
I did the short one because we're running late.
Yeah.
So, oh, this is awesome. I see Todd. I see
Compress,
Estella.
compress.
Yeah. We're running late because I went to go get a beer and I'm gonna pour it real quick. So, man, not a lot of news this week, but there was a little bit of news about our former employer.
Holy crap. Yeah. I mean, it's like there wasn't a whole bunch of XR talk, or there was a whole bunch of XR news, but there's that one little piece. It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we will definitely have thoughts. But we have a guest. So I think we should introduce our
We should
guest.
introduce our guest, I think.
So
Yeah. This guest put me through one of the most miserable photogrammetry with a drone projects I have ever been through.
wow.
It
What
was
a
116 degrees outside, and I literally had to take the drone and put it into a freezer when I was recharging the batteries so that it wouldn't explode. But the project was really freaking fun, and I just had a blast doing it. But it was non-trivial. It was not an easy project, but God,
well
it was fun.
God, I don't do we even want him on? He sounds like a pain in the
No,
ass.
no, he's a great client and a super creative dude. And I was just telling him earlier that every time I mention his name in Portland, people are like, "Oh, I love that guy." So I think we're lucky really to have him on the show.
All right.
So
Well, I am gonna bring him in. Hey,
okay,
Craig. There
come
he
on.
is. You're here. Hey,
Hey.
Hello.
Craig.
Did I part,
Yeah, you parted the sea.
get the
Uh,
part animation going?
yeah. The
Hello. Thanks for a humbling introduction.
yeah. I don't think you're a jerk at all. Unlike Spencer, Craig. I think you're great.
I know I got mixed
I did
feelings
not say
now.
he was a jerk. Oh my God.
In fact,
It was a challenge.
anyone that brings Spencer frustration and pain in a working relationship, I welcome because I'm usually on the inverse part of that equation.
There we go.
So, Craig,
Excellent.
let's see.
Welcome.
Sometimes we well, I guess all the time we like to talk about how we know each other. So my introduction
Yeah.
to Craig was I moved to Portland, and our dear mutual friend, all of our mutual friend, Alicia Naples, said, "Hey, there's this really awesome guy named Craig. He's an Adobe resident. He's doing all this interesting stuff, and he wants to talk about AR, but he had some technical questions." And I think that's how we got connected. I think that's how we met at first. And
Yeah.
you told me about your light capsules effort, which we're going to definitely get into. And yeah, we kind of hit it off. And then I think wasn't that long the Winter Lights Festival happened, and we went out and saw some of your work, and my wife and I came out. And yeah, we've just been kind of buds ever since. Um,
Yeah.
and then Spencer, and then of course, I must have introduced you and Spencer. That's like I can't imagine that you were connected any other way
I really don't know how to meet people.
without me.
I depend solely on Paul to help me meet people.
It's true. He's so
Yeah,
introverted, and I'm so
it's
extroverted.
true. That's true.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
so yeah, we let's talk about like if you want to talk about work before that period that I met you, that'd be interesting. But
Yeah.
let's talk about your journey with a little bit of lean towards the reason why I'm excited to have you on the show is because you and I have always framed your work as augmented reality because you are
Mm.
augmenting reality, but just not in a lot of traditional sense that a lot of ways people think of. So I think it's a really
Exactly.
interesting perspective to bring. So
Yeah. Thanks.
give us the rundown.
Sure. Yeah. I think. Well, it's funny you mentioned Alicia because I was a creative resident with Adobe at the time, and when I first started, um, first little backstory on the creative residency. It is a 1 year long residency program where you are supported with a full salary for a year, benefits, travel, hardware, whatever you would need to get a passion project of yours completed, including a mentor within Adobe and then a mentor outside of Adobe. I actually didn't have an external mentor for the first 6 months of my residency, because the one I had lined up had like other things going on, and I just didn't have one. And I just randomly went to Alicia's talk she gave at Instrument, and she gave this amazing talk about, she mentioned Journey and Back to the Future and like all these things. And I'm just like, who is this person? I went up and introduced myself, and fast forward, she graciously wanted to be like my external mentor through the rest of my residency. So we would check in, and that's how we met.
Was this while Alicia was at Magic Leap? Was this no?
No. So my first summer in Portland, just to kind of get me connected to the community, I did a couple brown bag session things, and there's a huge agency in town called Instrument, and they were running a program called the Cookie Shop. And it was, I don't know exactly why, but it was all about exploring VR and AR. And they actually had a little community space where they were like, hey, we've got a HoloLens, it magically wasn't out yet, but they were like, we've got a Vive set up. Anyone in the community can come check it out and see what we're doing with it. And they were exploring immersive media in a really cool collaborative way. And a part of the Cookie Shop program were these presentations. And so I did one with Alicia. I think it was the same one, but I also did one on my own. And
so this was after Magic Leap.
Yeah, for sure. And
okay.
I'm pretty sure that I will share a link. I'm pretty sure that presentation got recorded and published online. And she cries in it.
Great.
Oh, that's the one.
That's really good.
That's the one with the scotch and the crying.
Yeah. So Craig, I don't know if you got that backstory, but basically, Instrument, they were being very gracious hosts, and they were like, "What, do you require anything for your presentation?" And Alicia was like, I like a good 12-year-old scotch, and and so they gave her a bottle that she drank without eating a meal, and so she was very like into the presentation, and she was a little embarrassed. She cried. I was like, it was amazing. I think you made people in the audience cry. I'll dig it up because it was a really good presentation. So I didn't realize that. I thought you knew her before that. So that's great.
Yeah, no, it's just random. So it made an impact on me, the amount of alcohol that was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's wild.
She's super smart, and she can hold her drink.
Yeah. We will get her on at some point. She's now living in Amsterdam,
I love that.
so it's the time differences.
This will be the 3 a.m. XR talk, right?
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably should do that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
Nice.
Okay, so that's our little mutual connection. And so you did so during the Adobe residency, was that just your full-time focus for that period of time?
Yeah, it was full-time. Awesome. Pretty much. I mean, it was very intense, and 1 year goes by really quickly. But the project Light Capsules, which you mentioned, seeing at the Light Festival, was my project. And what I wanted to do was, I had been doing projection mapping for a handful of years prior to the residency, but I wanted to bring to life all these old worn ads and ghost signs that are around all around the world, and using light as you mentioned, augmented reality to augment and put the paint back where the worn letters were or are, and that doesn't damage the signs. It's not like painting over them. Some of these signs are so worn you can't even see them anymore. And that was my project. I traveled around. I did a 2-week project in London for the London Design Fest. They basically pushed me to push myself and supported that journey. I did, I think, a total of like 13 during the residency, and I'm now up to like 34 total that I've done. And I started numbering them 001 because I, of course, way too ambitiously thought I would do 100 in 1 year, which is not very feasible. But
hey, you know what? 001 is always a good starting point. You never know, right? Don't do 01, and for God's sakes, never do _1, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting too. I've met so many people along the way from photography and archival sides that have been collecting, like photographically collecting these ghost signs and these faded ads and their locations. And then there's sign painters I've met from all over the world at like letterheads meetups, and and learn about the actual craft of painting these signs 100 so years ago, and then the high tech, projection mapping, emerging tech, bleeding edge technology sort of side. So it's this really weird Venn diagram that I live within. And even the signs I'm reviving, I didn't design. I'm just kind of a transient that's like bringing them back to life as a weird time portal sort of way, and doing the research. And I've made friends with historians and librarians, and it's been really interesting and continually happening project. So I'm still really excited about it.
Yeah, I remembered when I visited your office and we talked about that a little bit, like that there is this
Yep.
whole community of people that there's already this little community of people that like document signage that was in a physical location. Maybe there's a little piece of it, and they actually do a lot of the historical digging on it. And I think the one you did locally for the Winter Light Festival, the coolest thing that was the one by Stormbreaker Brewing, and they had the because sometimes you'll have a sign that was actually 3 or 4 different signs over a period of time. And the really cool one to me was like, it was either a jewelry shop or an eyeglasses shop that had this bizarre O font, like
Yeah.
that you had to recreate from reference, right? Or did like,
Yeah.
do you just
Yeah.
look for pictures and try to figure out, like, do you have to hand rebuild all that stuff?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is back when there weren't typefaces that you could just type out. And even if you could, there were definitely guides for how to paint these letters. Every letter is different because it's been hand painted. So all the S's are different shapes. There's no like sharing. I've done with Coca-Cola, and even that, like the Coca-Cola like logo brand mark hasn't changed for many, many years, but there's slight variations because everything's hand painted.
Right.
And a lot of that too is like you can barely make out the letters, but a lot of these were designed to, just refreshing my memory, Dylan Rogers, jeweler and optician, and it's got this O
Yeah.
that's like really weird shape. They are these letter forms that you just don't see nowadays. So if anything, there's so much inspiration finding like, oh, that's an O, then you can see a little hint of another letter and realize, okay, that's another letter. And then you have optician, and now you can look by location for opticians that were maybe in city directories in 1960s.
Oh, interesting. They would maybe use the same letter forms.
Yeah, right. So there are definitely there's different terms for them, like half brick, full brick, or half block. A lot of these were designed based off of the actual bricks on the side of buildings. You do 3 bricks high, a 2 brick gap, 5 bricks high. Like you have a grid there, and a lot of these people are learning.
Well, because
how
a
to
brick
paint.
was kind of a standard measurement at that point, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of that. That's actually a really good tell if a sign is genuine or not. There's a giant West Elm one that's right in Brooklyn, and you can tell it's obviously not real, but they didn't align. If you see a graphic that's not aligned to brick height, then it's clearly just they did a stencil, or they sprayed a thing, or they applied a graphic or something. And there's a lot of good work done. Like in Disneyland at the Cars sort of area, they did a really good job of the signage there. The fake signage that they made is actually to brick height, which I was pretty impressed with. There's a lot of those like weird kind of things of letter forms.
Dude, that is so hipster. Oh my god.
It's so detailed.
That sign is not brick height.
That's cool though. I mean, it's like this, you're kind of in the know. I mean, so
Yeah, no, that's kind of the craftsman view, that none of us would ever have known.
well, I mean, I mean, like it's like how we can tell if a game was built with Unity or Unreal, or like, it's like you dive deeper in your craft, and you become discerning. So you're digitally recreating because I really like to keep this show around like nuts and bolts and process. So you're digitally recreating these pretty much in 2D tools, right? Like as Illustrator or things like that.
Illustrator. Yeah. So I'll pretty much use, Photoshop, I'll stitch together a bunch of high res photos. I'll make it as flat and like perspective free as possible, so I have like a clean grid. I'll use Illustrator and the pen tool to actually like digitally use the pen to vectorize every letter, every little bit that I can, color it to the best of my ability, and then bring that into After Effects, which I'll animate. maybe Premiere if it's something gets more complex and I want to composite some stuff together. But then I'll export that, and then I'll use MadMapper most of the time to project it and align it back on itself using a content guide.
So first of all, I want Todd Little in the chat. I think we may have a world's first coined term of Brixels. So,
Nice.
Craig, I don't know if you've heard.
Nice.
I don't know if you've heard of Brixels before, but it's a new word that was invented
Hey,
here.
how many pixels high is that font?
Brixels. It is. I mean,
Depends on the Brixel.
I mean, a Brixel is a wide aspect ratio pixel, right? It's like a very. It's like very wide.
Yeah.
So
square pixel.
So I wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit because you build in 2D, and then your output is really a video, right? Like especially if you're projecting on a surface that has multiple different variations, you actually have some post-production kind of blending of what you're putting out there, right? And then the real challenge comes in. You've got this video that you want to put on a surface that a lot of times is a wall, but there's these interesting variables that come into play because the projector is not perfectly parallel to the wall or perfectly the same height as the target, and so you've got to warp this so it appears perfectly flat if it's a flat wall, and that's where MadMapper comes in. That's a tool.
Yeah, exactly. So MadMapper is a projection mapping tool that you can essentially have this video of a sign that is what it used to look like. Maybe it has some simple fades or like the letters painting, whatnot. I now need to align that to a surface in the real world. The projector
from the angle of your projector, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But what's interesting about mapping is ideally you want to like a projection screen in a theater, you want the projection to be perpendicular, so it's hitting the surface as perpendicular as possible. But you can project from angles. You'll lose brightness in the resolution. You're skewing your pixels, obviously. But that's been a lot of the time when I'm trying to hit these signs. I kind of need to project from a slight angle or get on a roof or find like a ultra short throw lens so I can actually hit something that's 4 feet away from the wall because all I have is a sidewalk and then there's a street. So there's always logistics for every sign. None of them are the same. But once you have a coverage, or like once you have the throw is what I keep saying, you can then warp your content within that overall throw to align with a mesh warp and everything and Bezier's. So
I have a question. I just noticed when I was setting this thing up that we're going to talk about a little bit later, that the Epson projector that I have is great, but it's not super wide, and so the area that I wanted to cover was a lot bigger than the room I had to put I couldn't take over the whole house, so
and you couldn't put the projector in the street and going through the window.
Exactly. So do you? I'm assuming that you have some experience with kind of like with a camera, setting different lenses on projectors to either focus them in narrow or bring them out wider.
I thought you were going to go to tiling projectors. I didn't even think about using glass.
I mean, I've done both. Honestly, a lot of the time you will, depending on the surface, like regardless of how far away or how big your projector or your lens, the right lens is, you're still throwing an amount of lumens or brightness over a huge area, so you might not even see it. Like you can cover a 80-foot wide wall, but chances are you probably want to split that up and do, like every 20 feet have a projector, for example. And then you have to mesh, then you have to do edge blending to like combine the projectors together and make sure everything looks as seamless as possible. So,
and that's like a mask on the edge of each one, and there's some kind of like a compositor software, right? That allows you to blend them together.
Yeah, you can do it manually with just like a black to white sort of blend, like a gradient basically, is kind of the bare bones way. Or there's ones that like a dome projection that will actually use camera input to synchronize and like figure out exactly where every little edge blend needs to go. So the output is based on a 3D model. You'll actually like unwrap a 3D model for a building or a dome or a cylinder, and your content will be created to a UV map. So for like 3D sort of knowledge, You're making your content to that, and then your 3D model will be the thing that is actually aligned in the real space, regardless of how many projectors you
Right.
have.
So Lightform is doing a little bit of that,
Well, that's
right?
that's. I wanted to
A
kind of
little
get
bit.
into the. I wanted to get into like Craig's production and
Right. What's the hard
process.
part?
Yeah,
Right.
like just to kind of point
Yeah.
out all the different steps, because I do think we'll get into like why there's now tools that make this a little easier for somebody getting started that we're going to show it. But I did want to. There's a couple questions that popped up. One was from our friend Estella.
Estella.
She wanted to know, how did you get into the light capsules and projection mapping stuff before the Adobe Residency? She wanted a little
Yeah.
bit more backstory before that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So way back when I was like a nerd, I played a lot of video games. I just loved the idea of creating these 3D worlds and wanted to go to school to create video games. I actually went to Champlain College in Vermont, which has a really good video game 3D art and animation program. But I went for multimedia, like more generic design, and took all of the 3D classes I could. So I had this weird half 3D graphic design major, and then I got a job, an internship at a design studio, worked industrial design, designing footwear, which is like a perfect mix. I didn't really even know what industrial design was, and I was like thrown into the mix and started sketching shoes, like lateral top views. Like I did a lot of work for Chaco and Merrill and Patagonia, and then realized I was missing that digital component. Like why I loved games so much was actually there was something missing there. So I've been seeing projection mapping at this point for a couple years, and Saks Fifth Avenue and projects by like Moment Factory and Obscure Digital.
This was like
And
the crumbling buildings and
yeah,
like
exactly.
water,
You're
like slime pouring out of windows, stuff like that.
yeah, 3D effects,
Yeah.
projection, 3D projection mapping, as they say. And I knew I didn't have the money or the hardware to do anything that large of a scale, but I
Because
had
it
been
was not
designing
cheap
these.
back then either,
Mm-mm.
and
Oh
that was
no,
that
I
was
mean,
that was not a $700 purchase.
no, right? And it's still like it's still very expensive to do those large, installations,
Right.
but it's very achievable to do basically what we're going to show you have for pretty affordable. Even when I started, I was like, okay, what's smaller? And I realized as we were working on footwear design, we would present these in PDFs, right? Like colorways of like, here's the green shoe, here's the red shoe. And I realized, well, I could use a blank white shoe and project the colors and designs and graphics on it. So I did a proof of concept, taught myself with a full screen kind of originally it was full screen Photoshop, which is a terrible idea. That's not for projection mapping at all. Um, but I found like Mad Mapper and just kind of like got a license and just started messing around with it. And then that got picked up by Gizmodo, this project projection mapping on shoes, and it kind of just like steamrolled from there. And that was now 7 years ago, or 7 or 8 years ago. And it went from project to project. I think the hardest thing is that first year you're working independently. Like I left my full-time job, and that was probably the hardest point because I only had one project under my belt, and I didn't know where to go from that, like how to get notoriety, how to
Right.
get more work. So I
How to keep
started
paying the
doing.
bills.
Yeah, that's the first
Right.
one. Money's a huge part. Yeah, it'll influence. Like I immediately within a few months was like, I guess I'll go back to making websites or like design, like branding. But I'd
Oh,
been doing
brutal.
industrial design, so it's rough. And I ended up getting a couple friends together to do like an installation for an art festival in Vermont. And we did like a Unity, like a projection of a Unity scene on a back wall, and this projection mapped tessellated tree sort of theme. It was called Growth. And then that had a lot of people excited about it. And I documented that really well, had a friend film it. And that's key, I think, is like making things, but then documenting them professionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can
Yeah, oh,
you
yeah.
can make crappy
we
foam core look really great.
we've talked about that many times, like on
Yeah,
this show, because a lot of people are trying to get their careers started, and we're trying to help like talk about the hardest thing is building up your portfolio, especially with
totally.
these types of technologies.
Yeah.
And by the way, I wanted to mention we do have a lot of video links to share because Craig has a lot of videos. I'll share the Alicia instrument presentation. Um,
Yeah.
because Spencer is going to be sharing his screen for the later part of the show, I don't
Yeah.
have my screen share set up, so that's why we're not doing the thing usually where we go to websites. So what was interesting to
Yeah.
me about your backstory was it was funny because we recently had Tara Hatfield on and we had Estella on who's
Mm-hmm.
in the chat. And Tara did a
Mm-hmm.
project where she was projection mapping on shoes. And
Mm-hmm.
Estella kind of has a similar backstory where she wanted to get into animation, like how you said you want to get into games. And she talked about
Yeah.
how once she got into it, she realized there was like there was a different opportunity than she had really set herself up for. So it's really,
Totally.
it seems like we're starting to hear more and more common threads of we're just creative people, curious people, and we set goals, but it's totally okay to like once you get close to that goal that you're like actually I'm not that into it, or I'm like more interested in this little piece of it on the journey. So
Yeah.
it's really cool to hear so many people have that, which I
I think
yeah.
also, that we're all artists and designers. Like we just recently did a bid, and in the bid, I had Paul as a developer, and I had a sound guy, and I had all this. And I said, yes, we're all designers, because next to it was like audio slash designer, developer slash designer. We're all
Mm-hmm.
artistically kind of creative people, and these tech things, it's like, is it a sable brush number two, or is it screen printing, or is it a digital, scan? I mean, it's all just art tools for us to project our creativity out. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's also using like my favorite description of a designer, like in the most generic term, is like you make decisions around a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
you can be all types of designer, but what you're really doing is you're curating the solution to a problem, and you do that
Mm-hmm.
through making decisions. And so really the tool doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of us work in visual stuff, but and so we have a sense of aesthetic that drives the decision making. But
Yeah.
you're really you feel empowered to craft. I mean, it's all kind of interrelated. And actually, Cami in our chat asked earlier, like, she said, I still don't know what industrial design is. Um, I
Yeah.
what's your definition of industrial design, Craig?
It's so funny as you're mentioning designers and like all these terms. I'll finish my whiskey and we can have a rant about experience design as a title. Uh, but yeah, when I first started, I mean, industrial design as a term is more of like product design. Again, product design, actual products. So physical things that need technical explanations for how to fabricate them or how to build them. An industrial designer is like a much more technical of a in like Braun or uh, like creating physical products, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just really hard because the past like 5 or 10 years, you've seen this flow of product design and experience design. Like product design could relate to an app because technically an app is a product. It's a
Mm-hmm.
digital product, but it makes it hard to describe when you're like, oh, I'm a product designer. Traditional sense, that's an industrial designer. That's someone who is designing a physical thing that needs to exist.
And they
Whereas
all have a
product
layer of
design,
experience to them, whether they're physical or digital.
totally
So
technical
is that your
technical
rant?
designer. No, um, not even close. No, there's a but industrial design. I mean, I was doing like footwear design, trade show booths, like point of purchase displays, anything that kind of touches the 3D like spatial physical world that needs to be built. Kind of falls under industrial design. There's like clothing products, physical apparel that could fall into industrial design. I literally learned the term when I joined the team and was like, yeah, I guess I'd do that, which is kind of in between 3D for games because I was really good at like rendering and like making things look good and polishing renders. Even when I was in school, this was an elective class I was taking, and I remember a lot of the people that this was their their major. They were kind of blown away by the like how I just wanted the render to look good, and it was just this dumb little horn 3D object. Um, so coming from the gaming side, it's kind of interesting because this came full circle into AR and VR, which is all not. You'll hear the difference between like CAD and like polygon based 3D, right? A lot of industrial design is SolidWorks and it's based on math. It's like saying vectors versus pixels, raster versus vector. It's kind of like NURBS curves. It just becomes a nightmare when you have to take this mathematic, beautiful SolidWorks file and turn it into a low poly thing that can run real time. So, was that the rant? No, that wasn't the rant.
So I definitely want to get into the exercise with Spencer, but real quick, like, so we kind of left off at light capsules. Take us on the journey, but from that to you sending Instagram posts from Johnny Depp's South of France compound.
Lying in his pool drinking his wine.
Is that just what happens when you're a projection mapper? You just wind up in the South of France.
You black out and you wake up and these things happen. No, it started. Let's see. Light capsules was definitely. I mean, the opportunity I had with Adobe was amazing. I was able to do this little project, this light capsules idea I had, which had been brewing in my mind for over a year. And I did it in a way that I think established it as a solid project. It had the support of Adobe. One of the last projects I did was with the Neon Museum, and I projected on some of their neon signs during a road trip at the end of my residency. And it was
Craig, what's the Neon Museum? Tell us what that is.
It's funny you ask. The Neon Museum, it is a boneyard, beautiful boneyard collection of neon signs in Las Vegas, and it is a collection of all of the past properties, the Stardust, the Golden Nugget, all these like legendary places that have since either imploded their buildings or have renovated their signs. And it was a collection started by Yesco, which is a company that made a lot of these signs. It was a dirt lot, a collection of signs, and then the Neon Museum was founded, I believe, 2012, and they had an actual lot, and they have grown their collection immensely. And this is where Spencer and I overlapped for this wonderful project.
This is where you made Spencer's life miserable.
That out there in that boneyard, it becomes 116 degrees sometimes.
I sure do. I instinctively know. Yeah, it turns out Vegas is hot. This is a very
almost desert-like, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's very desert-like, similar to a desert. And there's all these amazing signs, and part of this newer project, kind of getting ahead of myself, but I did a pop-up projecting the same idea of projecting on ghost signs, like worn painted faded ads on signs that used to self-illuminate, on bulbs, on neon tubes. And what we found was it was fascinating. I could bring the paint back to the signs, but also have these bulbs dazzle and shine again. And the next day, Rob McCoy, their CEO, reached out to me and was like, my organization is buzzing. Can we produce this as a permanent exhibition? So for that whole following year, after my residency, I created a show called Brilliant that is still running at the museum, and we're working on a big upgrade to it. And it's been running over 2 years now, and we're doing an upgrade.
Did you? Sorry to interrupt, but I'm always thinking about our audience, and they're always wondering like how to develop their career. Like, how did that pop? Like, so the short version of the story is you did a quick little pop up experience that led to this really big gig for you.
Yeah.
I would say career defining. How did the pop up experience come to be? How did you get that opportunity?
Yeah. It's funny. It was a cold email. I emailed the Neon Museum. Hey, I'm aware of you. I can't wait to visit. I'm doing this tour. I would love to do just a pop-up test for one of the nights. Again, that having the residency with Adobe like helped leverage that to be legitimate. I'm not
and your prior experience with the signs as well.
Yeah, and having video and a portfolio to show. Like, I'm not a kid asking to mow your lawn. I've done some cool stuff, and I want to do it for you for free.
Yeah.
to start.
And yeah, I mean, that's the big part too, is like, I wanted to do it for free. They waived their, technically we used it we did in their lot, the North Gallery, which is now Brilliant, but it was a space they only use for photo and video. So they rent that out, and they have the main boneyard, which you take a guided tour and learn from their amazing like ambassadors about the history of all the signs and can ask questions. This was more of just like an empty lot. There was no power. I had to rent a generator, bring it out and do this little test. So it was very much like me asking, hey, I'm a creative resident, like leveraging my like legitimacy to ease their concerns that this isn't like a random thing, but it's part of this bigger tour, part of this project. And in exchange for this sort of pop-up, they can share it, we'll share Adobe, that sort of stuff makes, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's trying to like do one thing to get the next step in line to the next thing. Like I had no idea. I wasn't planning on it being a permanent exhibition. It was very much a concept, proof of concept, a little demo. And they were so excited about it. They wanted me to be the one to take the lead to produce this as a permanent exhibition. And then it became that. And then, we did upgrades to it and some got the rights to music, did the same, digitizing the signs, except tubes and everything had to be very specific. And we're using a similar form structured light scanning, which is what powers Lightform, a similar technique to actually get a view of the signs so we can actually animate like literally thousands of bulbs all at the same time. So it was definitely an interesting technical feat. And then the South of France that you're mentioning was a project I worked on with Tim Burton, which again happened just kind of by luck, I guess, that, Tim's people reached out to the museum and wanted to facilitate a large exhibition of his work and make new work and kind of do like a integrated takeover of the Neon Museum with a bunch of history of, his films, Mars Attacks, and these sort of legendary kind of films and characters and new things too, that ended up integrating with the Boneyard. And I just had an interesting position where it was like, we weren't even talking about doing a remix of Brilliant with Tim Burton. It was more of like I got brought on by Tim to facilitate a role of leading the design of many different new pieces and parts, and was working in between the museum and Tim Burton and his team. So that was like a very amazing opportunity that I was facilitating, and some of that was going to France and working from there, and then going to LA, working from there, and then Vegas for the final install. So, and Spencer getting a 3D scan allowed us to actually work remotely in France and in LA to place these things.
Oh, so that's, I mean, frankly, I'm still learning about it. So that's why Spencer did the photogrammetry, was so you had a fairly accurate 3D model of the physical space to work against.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah. It's like, it's the entire like main Boneyard space, but the exhibition's in the process of closing now. But we built a 30-foot dome, like a massive dome in the space. There's a 40-foot tall neon sign that had to be positioned at the right angles because we're pouring cement. Like we couldn't just show up day of and be like, yeah, the sign's going to go here. And Tim's saying, oh, well, actually, it would be great if this was turned 2 degrees this way. We were able to have a rough scan, so spatially you can see the 82-foot tall Hard Rock Cafe sign, the top of the pavilion, this 30-foot grid wall, like all these different puzzle pieces had to come together. And Spencer flying down and doing this full scan enabled us to use that with another project called The Wild, based in Portland. Other Portland friends.
Oh, you brought that into The Wild. That's right. I forgot about that.
So we did that whole previs within The Wild, and we were able to actually like collaboratively. I was able to show Tim like, okay, here's the actual, like, let's move this a little bit this way, or let's.
Oh, you put him in a headset.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it took a couple times, but he absolutely loved it once he got kind of comfortable with it and could kind of see spatially. Like, there's nothing. You can't kind of put a measurement there, for someone who's so analog and like really needs to see it in person. He actually loved the effect of that kind of like lower poly photogrammetry sort of weird vision thing. And he actually loved that. And we used that throughout some of the space in these little viewports and things. So
cool.
That was a huge and complex thing to scan in 3 days. That was, I mean,
a mash of many signs and a huge area.
Oh my God! I remember coming out there going, okay, so I can only shoot between sunrise and just a little bit after sunrise, and sunset a little bit after sunset, and make sure I get all of it. And it's
So I get your normal process of like, I build a video, I warp it and map it to a target surface. But how does that translate to what you were just talking about, where you're working against a virtual model? Like what what is your tools and workflow there? Oh, and Spencer just turned into a
Sorry.
Skype logo.
No, hold on. I'm not anymore.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
That's fine. Go ahead.
There we go. Yeah, so for Brilliant itself, we were tasked with that problem because the original proof of concept I did was with MadMapper, and I would take the same scenario, take a picture of each of the signs, vectorize them, map them separately. But then when we turned into, okay, how do we, first off, do we put towers here? How do we air condition the technology? How many projectors are we using? All of these questions had to get answered. And then what platform are we using? Like, how are we going to map all of the signs where if one gets slightly off, like what happens there? So we were actually using the structured light scanning ability in MadMapper to get a view of what the projector looks like. And we'll get a good view of that when we do the Lightform demo, but it essentially will pairs a projector, which is, like you were saying earlier, a projector and a camera have such interesting similar qualities because one is receiving light to a sensor, and then a projector is basically puking light out.
Right.
So
it's a reverse camera.
Yeah, exactly. You're just spitting images everywhere. So I like using that analogy when I've taught projection mapping workshops and camera. People tend to know like, oh, well, I have like a wide angle on my phone or a telephoto lens. It's similar with a projection. Bigger projectors have interchangeable lenses, much like you'll have a camera body and the right lens. So you'll actually use the right lens for the right job if you need a wide throw lens because you're close to a wall, or you have a grid ceiling that you have to be close to the wall versus you're pulling the projector far away, you'll use a different lens for it. So a lot of the normal projectors you'll have to don't have interchangeable lenses. Consumer ones that you'll put in, the one that Spencer's using has a fixed lens or one with a slight zoom to it. But yeah, all of that was up for discussion. How do we project all of these different signs? And we use structured light scanning by using a projector and then having a camera next to it that would then, through a series of lines, like deliver you an image that is exactly pixel per pixel what the projector is outputting. So
what was really amazing about that technology, about like, laying out the pattern and laying out the lines and stuff like that, is that looking at the Lightform website, they had this like night sun, insane projector that was projecting onto a mountain in down in the desert somewhere. I think in Joshua Tree or something. And so they projected onto the mountain. And I thought, good Lord, dude, like how are they scanning the mountain? Well, they're scanning it with the projector. The projector can reach the mountain.
Yeah, if you can get if you can get photons to it, you can get photons back off of it, right?
Right, exactly. And it was just, fantastic what they were able to do with this thing that's like, an eighth of a mile away.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get, because we definitely hit on Lightform a couple times, but I did want to point out to like everyone, like Spencer and I had this whole big conversation a couple episodes ago about calibration, and it was in the context of planting virtual content in the real world, or actually, even if you're in a VR headset, mapping physical objects to the totally virtual side. Like, there is this moment of what we also called it registration, which I really liked. And like, Spencer and I did a couple of exhibits for Monterey Bay Aquarium that were projector driven. And we really saw I'll just get to my question. Was the Neon Museum your first long-term project where you had to think about, hey, these projectors are going to move with temperature cycles and over time? Like, was that new for you to have to deal with? Because normally up until the Neon Museum, a lot of your projects were kind of guerrilla style, like, you're up for a brief period of time and and then you're gone. So was that new for you?
Yeah, for that level of like permanent sort of install, absolutely. There's definitely ones I've done which are like a week or 2 weeks, but anytime you are doing an installation longer than 2 weeks, you have to think, even 1 or 2 nights, like you have to think, are you resetting the projectors? Are you breaking it down? Are you, a lot of the logistics had to do with how do we put projectors in these imaginary spaces and keep them cool enough that they can run in 110-degree heat
Yeah.
when drones are shutting down and falling out of the sky. Like, how do you
116.
how do you solve that?
116.
Yeah, it gets hot. So we actually had to, like, I designed these tubes, and then Yesco helped. The same company that like fabricated a lot of these signs were the ones that fabricated these tubes. But we had 4 projectors stacked in each of these tubes. There's air handlers that go underground to like a cooling unit.
Oh, wow.
That keep these things cooled at all times. And that's the only way we can actually do it. And then what you were saying about keeping these locked down, what's good is we actually are projecting from far enough away that we don't have a lot of parallax, like slight shifts going on. So we at launch we had a couple issues with like a lens was kind of doing a weird shift, so we would swap out a couple units. But for the most part, a lot of these have maintained really well with their image location. And what's good about this sort of the structured light scan is if something's slightly off, it's usually a lens shift sort of issue. So we've just been like lens shifting to try and like get the image locked up. And every like handful of months or whenever we do an update, we'll do a full like mapping reset where we will actually like warp like every little bit to make sure everything's realigned and keep it. That's like since the beginning of this project, that's been the bane of my existence.
Oh, really?
So the neon's not going to be aligned. So like it's making sure that it's stayed really, really reliably.
So the hardware that you used, you were pretty happy with.
Yeah, we're using Watchout to kind of like play back.
This is the product placement here, right? So go ahead.
Actually, Craig, you really should be like sponsored by like projector. Yeah, you need an Epson like patch on your. Well, or wait, Epson's probably too low end for you.
I actually really like Epson's Pro line. I'd like please send some Optima. I've loved their short throw stuff. I know they have like an office in Portland too. Yeah, I try and like just see what the best is out there. I know like Watchout in the industry is pretty like simple as a scenario goes. I've trained on Disguise 1 or called D3. That's crazy. We used D3 for the Trailblazers pre-show that I worked on with Meyer Pro and the Trailblazers. That was incredible, and that was again more of the 3D alignment process of 4 giant projectors in an arena. So it's like figuring out the right tool for the right job. For this especially, we're doing 8 projected outputs. We're using structured light scan to actually get a content template for us, and then I'm the one vectorizing and animating all 8 projectors and making.
Okay, I have a question about that. So you do a structured light scan, and then do you derive a 3D model from that you can bring into Maya or into C4D, and then like do you do the whole like do you build out where your projectors are and what the frustum of the projector is and where the 3D is?
Oh, like a CAD model.
Like can you
including
build
the projectors?
a 3D model of your setup and then make adjustments and then record those adjustments and bring them back into the hardware?
No.
Is that crazy? Is that?
But Craig, this will be the nerdiest interview you've ever done. I guarantee it.
No, it's funny because that's where my brain started, right? When I first started projection mapping, I was like, I need a 3D model. I need to figure out what the projector is in actual space versus real space. I emailed like Kyle McDonald back when I was first started because he made this Map-A-Mock tool, which is now like similar to what Disguise and what MadMapper used for this 3D alignment. That's how I figured needed to happen, is needing a 3D model. And with this process that Lightform uses, as well as the structured light scan, you don't need 3D models or anything because it actually eliminates the whole mapping aspect of it. You're just saying projector is here. Here's exactly what I can see from a projector. You'll get depth, which similar to like portrait mode, I guess you can get sort of like derive some Z depth, right? Like in and out depth, but you're not getting a 3D scan. So we did a photogrammetry scan of the Boneyard when we first kind of got there, the North Gallery, just so I could pre-visualize and show to the team and the museum, like, here's where we're thinking of having it all go. Like, it was mostly for previs and it wasn't for specifically deployment. But, we're constantly looking at like, okay, how can we upgrade to disguise. One, where we can use a 3D scan or use 3D spheres that are animating dynamically and add interactivity. If you walk up to a sign, can we get the bulbs to react to you? Like, those are all in the pipeline that we've been talking to the museum about, is like, how do we continually upgrade this so it's not, if it's not just playing back one show. That's the big upgrade we're talking about for this next upgrade.
At that point,
Yeah.
then you are projecting real-time 3D or real-time onto, through that projector. So the person comes up and you've got to connect or whatever that notices that they're there, and the bulbs kind of like wash away from them or come towards them or whatever. So so then it's not just video, it's not static video being played. You're actually projecting and this is where the whole AR thing comes in, is that, now it's an interactive experience, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I honestly, I think even the non-interactive is AR. I mean, you're figuring out a way to use digital media to enhance the physical, right? Like if you really distill it down. I want to make sure we have plenty of time to mess around with the Lightform. We've talked about it a lot. Since Cammie is such a dear friend of the show, I'm going to do this for her. She said, because earlier when you said that projectors are puking light out, she said it's like Craig's heart. That your heart, and I just want to warn you, Cammie is trying to be your best friend. So even though I'm helping her out, I'm calling her out as well. Cammie,
I thought I was your best friend, Cammie. What the hell?
Cammie's always trying to be people's best friends. I'm just warning you when you get back up into Portland. So Craig's been down in LA for a while. He's making his way back up. And then
he's going to come take this thing from me, and it's going to make me really sad. So let's talk about it.
Should I switch? So should I switch over to your desktop, Spencer, or do you want to do a little?
Yes, let's switch to the desktop.
All right, let's do that. Oh no, let me forgive me, folks, for I am manually moving name labels around as we stream because it's just easier than messing with the cameras. And while Spencer's getting settled in there, Estella did ask, like, what's the skill what skill are you trying to learn next? Where are you wanting to, break out into? What's your next thing?
Yeah. I was getting excited about like shaders for a bit. Like, it's so much more code focused, which I'm not as like an expert on. But figuring out real-time kind of dynamic stuff is so fascinating. Again, kind of goes back to my real world or real-time roots of like a game system, but you can dynamically have even within like Lightform we're going to show, but like having more dynamic things happen where you can control a lighting fixture around a 3D object versus just animation that you can trigger. See other stuff. I mean, I'm constantly learning new things that you can do in Blender, and like the new Blender I finally got my hands around.
So much better.
It's nuts. I don't know. I constantly am finding that in like analog stuff. Like I used to do a lot of screen printing. I'd love to get back into that, like more physical things, because then you can layer these digital aspects into them. Some VR stuff I've been messing with as far as a previs, obviously, but especially in the context of people working or being more remotely, I've now found a new interest in like, how can you use VR in ways that aren't, that can like facilitate that a little more. The Wild's a great example of like collaboratively working, but I don't know. There's no shortage of things to learn, and a lot of them kind of, I like keeping a balance of digital and physical, like not just like, oh, I'm learning to code a thing, but like, go build a chair.
I think it'll be cool to see you progress in that. I mean, because you have a very unique entry into this. Like you actually have a lot of really difficult concepts for people to grasp because you worked with the physical version of it first, and it's really interesting. So Spencer, what are we looking at? We got your desktop up and all of our faces in the corner.
Okay. All right. The first thing I wanted to do is just say that I have a lot of sadness right now, and this is what
we're looking at your Twitter.
I
just want you to know.
Sadness.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
It came up. Sadly, did you? I didn't know you made that. Oh,
well, I made this a while ago. Yeah.
Oh, you did.
But Yeah.
So
So
the world's just catching up to your leaper sadness. You'd already built
yeah.
the model. Oh, are you?
So
You know,
anyway,
Sketchfab has a little refraction. Did you use the refraction thing in there?
I did. I did. You
Nice.
see that?
Good for you.
Yeah, a
Good
little
for you.
refraction. Yeah. So this is downloadable. You can grab that model off of Sketchfab. So,
Oh,
hi, Albin. Okay. So this is the so I guess you guys can see me,
yes.
and I
You're
think
you're a
if I
little you're a
go
little picture in picture thing, but you're
okay,
there.
but if I do this, let's see here, that's already published, and let's just I think it's running right now. Yeah. So this
I'll try to go up to your
can you
big picture.
can you can you see that?
Let me try this.
So
Oh,
there's
sorry everyone. I'm trying to mix it. I've got us in the 3 column, which is focused on the cello and the plant.
okay, all right. I don't know how I can. Well, can you? So this is not full screen. This
No,
picture.
I can see your hand and mine and Craig's head
Right.
real
Okay.
big.
Interesting.
You
It'll be
love that?
interesting to see
Um,
how we.
So now I've got it back to. So just so everyone knows, normally I share the live feed with the guests so they can see what you all see, but because we wanted to share Spencer's desktop, I'm having to tell them. I'm having to tell them verbally what we're showing. So right now we're showing Spencer's desktop, and then the 3 of us are in a picture in picture.
So basically, what this is the end result of my dorking around for about an hour and a half today.
I'm sorry, that's a bass.
Um,
That's a bass, not a cello. Estella corrected me.
It's, oh, thank you, Estella. I will tell Shawneen that
Is that
someone
correct?
noticed that was a bass. Yes,
Okay,
it's a bass, not a cello.
Estella, that was correct, and I apologize.
Yes, yes, well done, well done. So this is kind of the end result of my kind of trying to figure this thing out. You got these layers over here. Each one of these layers is actually a selection, a depth selection of each one of the pieces of the scene as viewed from the projector over there. And so what I'm going to do, and I think, Craig, correct me if I'm wrong. If I click this little plus button here, I'll get a refresh. I'll get a new one, right?
You'll get a new slide, so you can. So,
new
yeah,
slide,
so,
but it still has the same selections. Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So once you have those objects, those kind of surfaces and those layers, you can make these different slides to kind of compose whatever you'd like from it.
Can
But,
you
I
can
think
you
it'd be
show the
interesting,
scan
like,
in
do a-
live?
Yeah, I would do
Yeah,
a
I
new
kind of want to
scan.
do the scan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just start fresh.
So,
So over on
new
the right
scan.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
new scan. Okay, so we're going to do a new scan, and I think I'm out of the way enough.
Yeah, so I
Um,
would recommend when Spencer does this part of the process, actually look at his video feed, not his desktop as much, because you'll see how
Right.
this thing it projects a special pattern into the room.
Yeah.
Oh, well okay, it does a live feed in the tool. I didn't realize that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, good. So now you can see. Oh no. Damn
No.
it. Okay, no.
So now
look over there.
look over Spencer's shoulder. So you can see
Yeah, look over there.
it's projecting here's the part I don't quite understand.
Yeah.
So I know it's projecting patterns of known delineations of black and white, and what I don't know is how it knows the scale, because the projector can be anywhere in the room, and it's flashing these patterns to determine depth, because it knows, like, oh, hey, if this black bar is smaller than the other part of the black bar, I see that thing is probably closer. But what I don't know is how it has an over, or maybe it doesn't care about scale. All it needs to
care
know.
about scale. No, yeah. All it needs to know is that the farthest bar is X width wide, and the closest bar is Y width wide.
Okay, so Craig's comment earlier makes sense about like how a phone with 2 cameras can determine depth, but it doesn't necessarily know scale. So it just knows the relation in Z space to each other, not necessarily how big that thing actually is.
Right.
Which doesn't matter, right? Because your projector also doesn't know that.
Right.
and
It's just puke and love.
Puke and
and
light.
here's another thing. Puke and light. That's right. And there's another piece of this is that your projector better be in focus before you
Yeah,
do this,
of course.
because if you're out of focus, then you're not going to get the clarity that you need for tight details.
It'll work. It just won't be as crisp, right?
Right. So
Craig,
there we go.
Ambient light.
Craig, I just got
there you go.
a mental image. Like, I think you should totally get one of your sign painter friends to do like an old school hot rod logo but it's instead of a motor, it's a projector, and there's just a tongue wagging out of the lens and light just spewing out of it. I'm trademarking that.
And there you go.
So I lost a little bit from the last scan. Like, this doesn't have as good of a scan, and I'm wondering if maybe that's because I am not focused, like I said.
What do the transparent thingies represent?
I was going to say, this is like, if you scroll your hole filling, there's kind of like a toggle there, brightness and hole filling. Brightness is interesting on your laptop. Yeah, within Lightform. If you scroll brightness up, that's kind of interesting too. This is like your diffuse. You're just like raw diffuse. So it's like almost without shadows and ambient sort of lighting. Same with the hole filling. You could actually rope that down all the way to 0 and see what the screen, this is what it actually gets. So that's what it actually sees, and it's filling in intelligently what the near pixels are. So that's as much as it can figure out. And then that gap is likely, I mean, based on scans I've done, reflective surfaces don't work very well because
the light
is reflecting and it's trying to read where that pixel is. Yeah.
Right.
That's why the background green.
It was earlier in the day. It was earlier in the day, and I had more light coming in through this window. So,
ambient light's a factor, shine surfaces to try and get like a clean scan. There's a lot of like interesting things that kind of play, but I mean, this is good enough to get kind of an outline, and if you want to project in the green area and the plant, look pretty good.
Yeah, look, we'll do the plane and we'll do the green area, right? So cool. I've been playing around with both the quick select and the magic wand. Magic wand is pretty doesn't the threshold is to do it.
Do you have to re-click it?
You have to actually undo it. There we go. From the threshold. No, actually, no. Sorry. Doing depth.
Interesting.
Depth. Yeah. So if I wanted to, actually, color threshold works better for that.
Yeah.
So maybe you drop it down even further.
What's so interesting to me is like, Craig, like when you talked about your like hardcore production process for the Neon Museum, and you know, when you want that level of detail and control, you're going to hand tune everything, and you're going to use like really low level tools.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of things, probably Lightform for that type of thing isn't maybe the best application. But then again, like if you had been commissioned to project on a base and a wall at the same time before you had this ability to depth map the scene, how would you even have done? Would you have two projectors with the masks and things like that?
It'd be interesting because I think, I mean, it's also one of those things where like some things are only possible when the technology is available at the right time. So you
wouldn't even do the project.
I mean, it would be very difficult. I mean, it would be like if it was Mad Mapper or if it's like a 3D model, like it still would go through such an insane process of, even if we had a 3D model, aligning it to the actual space would be so tricky that, you know, the structured light process, like I will add what we have right now, that scan that you got, you could export that and you can go into After Effects and animate on top of this, whatever you want. And then when you load it back in, you know, you can go that way. We're going a selection route and we'll add some effects to it. But yeah, I feel like, I mean, timing is such a huge thing across the board, many different circumstances, but this especially having the structured light scanning as a viable capability made brilliant like what it is for sure.
And so like, just so everybody's up to speed on, like, Spencer, are you essentially, you're trying to isolate something that you just want to put content you want to project content on. So you're like,
Right.
you're really kind of
So now I
picking
have two
through.
surfaces here now. I've got this one, this green thing. I don't have the base. I've got this surface, which is the kimono that's covering the mirror, because I didn't want to add that level of
Yeah,
complexity.
Craig, how do we structure projection on a mirror?
Yeah,
Have
you
tried
can't,
that?
but you can. Yeah,
No,
it
but
doesn't
like
work really well.
if you have a mirror that's reflecting something behind you, could you also bounce the projection through the mirror? Like, have you tried that?
Definitely. So if you have like a matte surface, say you have a black and white check ceiling or something, and you have a mirror at an angle, you can do a structured light scan, and it's just going to scan through the mirror at a surface, and as long as it's clear on that, like you'll get something. It'll just use the mirror as a reflection point.
Oh, you could do some cool stuff with fog.
But if you didn't want to, you just spray the mirror with hairspray and call it a day.
Yeah, you want a matte or satin surface. You don't want high gloss.
Exactly.
High gloss is not the best for scans, but
all right. So now we have these two. We have these two surfaces. We got the back surface and the front surface. Okay, and so on the front surface, I'm going to add an effect, and this effect is going to be what should I use here?
And these are all provided out of the box with Lightform.
These are all out of the box. Fire. There we go. Look at that. And then on the back, we're going to add some. No. You know what? On the front, let's stop that. We're on the front. We're going to get rid of fire. I'm going to put the fire on the back, and do effects, fire in the back, and then on the front, we're going to do two things, because Craig just showed me how to do this, which is awesome. So the first thing I'm going to do is media. I'm going to use this XR Talk on black. And I'm going to bring it down and bring it over here and kind of get our... Sorry, I'm not being super careful with how I do this. All right.
No, not even scaling proportionately or anything.
I know, right?
Oh my God, are you morphing? Oh man.
Hold shift, man. Hold shift.
Are you anamorphically scaling our logo?
I am.
That is blasphemy.
I'm not on brand right now. Okay, and then we're also going to put in an effect, which is going to be, let's go with, no, let's go with media. Yeah, let's do an effect. Let's do this crazy effect. Where's that one that...
Digital fade's pretty good.
Digital fade?
Oh, there it is, on the left. Right there where you are. Yep.
This one here? Okay. There we go. And so we're going to play it a little bit, see what happens. Oh, yeah, look at that.
So that's a preview.
Cool. Right. Digital fade is happening on top of
you can drag
the XR Talk, right? So we're going to take this digital fade and we're going to make it an add layer, which is what? Color dodge? Yeah. No, not color dodge.
Screen or lighten.
Screen. Black should not show. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So now we've kind of got this idea of like how it's going to look, and we'll go ahead and publish.
I'm gonna try my best to switch over to your camera feed, Spencer. So I'm gonna ask the audience to bear with me.
Bear with us, audience.
While I attempt to do this on the fly. Let me make sure I've got the. Okay.
So you might want to, Spencer, if you switch it back to design view instead of this view.
Mm-hmm.
You have two slides, so the first slide is blank, and it might just be black once it saves out.
Oh, I see. It is. It's doing that.
Switch it back to design.
Okay,
design versus design.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, everybody's seeing how the sausage is made here. Like I'm actually live editing views. So Spencer, so now I have a scene where Spencer, your camera feed is now big, so we can see the room, and I've got your desktop in place of where your head would normally be.
Okay.
But let me know if you want to switch back to the desktop. But now
So there you go.
yeah, there we go. So
There it is.
it's properly masked out just those areas you've selected.
Right. And now we'll go over here from kind of behind the thing, and you can kind of get an idea.
Oh, you're doing it like from the eye of the projector, like from the.
I'm a little higher than the projector, and you know, but yeah, let me get an idea there. But that was super fast, and like, you know, oh my God, how easy is that? How long would that have taken you to set up in the real world, Craig? Like with actual real toys?
That was.
I mean, especially on plants and stuff, I think is what this tool is so useful for, is complex things. Like if you're doing just an image, like a frame on a wall, you can definitely use like the pen tool in here. The quick select's really great to try and segment out different areas. But yeah, super quick. And you hit publish, and now it's just running wirelessly over, you know.
Well, right. That's the other thing, is that there is no wire.
Yeah, actually,
there.
That's one of my favorite parts.
Spencer, I'm gonna bring up your camera feed is the big feed right now. Can you kind of show the hardware setup? Because we didn't really get into that though. But like just to kind of impress upon everyone, this is a little box that sits with the projector, and once you publish from your PC, you're done, right? Like, I mean, you can walk away.
I'm gonna make everyone dizzy.
Oh, geez, yeah, you should have warned us before that. I'm gonna try to minimize the motion sickness there. Okay, let me switch back. So this is your projector, and then the Lightform is actually the little chunk on top. And
this thing here,
yeah.
So this is the brain of it, and then
it's got a camera.
It's got a camera and a projector, a light projector, I think. Right? No, what's going on here? This is camera and other sensor.
Yeah, it's a 4K, basically a 4K webcam that gives the Lightform eyes, and then you can use. This is the LFC, so you can use it with any projector within a certain throw ratio. And they also have LF2, which is integrated within a projector itself. So all you have to do is like mount that projector wherever you want. But this is the unit that allows you to, it connects basically HDMI to your projector. You put the webcam on top, and this unit itself just needs power that you're looking at. So the rest of it is controlled over a Wi-Fi network remotely. So now that you've hit publish, you can close your laptop off. You know, take your laptop wherever. And that's another thing. I've worked on so many projects, and you're tethered to a projector somewhere, or you have like a 50-foot cord or a 100-foot cord, and you're limited at a certain point by a signal going over HDMI. So it's really, that's a aspect of this, is you can kind of publish this, and then you can walk away, and it's just going to be running whatever slides you want. You can kind of move the slides. You can control it over OSC. That's a great part of all this.
I'm just going to translate a little bit for Craig. Like, he's basically saying that the LFC lets you use any projector, including Spencer's Office Depot Special or Craig's really fancy Japanese projectors. And that's your, or you can buy an all-in-one unit. So the LFC, that was, you got it early. You got it pre-release. Is it out now? Can people buy it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's out now.
Cool.
Lightform's been good friends of mine. I've done some collaborative projects with them, and one with Gemma O'Brien, who's an amazing letterer and illustrator and muralist from Australia. And we did a project augmenting a black and white mural in their headquarters in San Francisco. And they hooked me up with an LF1 that I was like beta testing for a while. They developed so many features since then, and then recently released the LFC. So this is what we're using now as a beta unit that I was messing around with Spencer with, and then I got stuck down in LA, and he's had it for the past 40 days or something.
It was amazing. It was like, hey, you could borrow it over the weekend. I'm just heading down to LA. And then, suddenly the zombie apocalypse happened, and I'm like, sweet, I got this freaking thing forever.
Yeah. But yeah, they're public now. You can go buy one. I think they ship in like a week or two, but awesome. They have, stock of them, and you can get the LF2 or the LFC and use whatever projector you want. If it's, $300 projector or a $50,000 projector, whatever you want to.
You
Yeah.
know what's sad is that and also happy. It's a happy sad thing is that Craig is going to drive up here through the zombie wasteland, and we'll be here next week, and I have to give this damn thing back, so I have to buy one now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a write-off.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all right.
Well, you've been so generous with your time. We are
Yeah,
we definitely have a bunch of stuff to link to in the show notes. I'm a terrible show host. I didn't ask people to like and subscribe at the beginning, middle of this show.
We're gonna point to something, or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes we do that. I usually forget. I'm just happy. I think I got the right microphone selected this time around. As always, our audience, Estella and Cami, really held it down this time around. I exposed Cami's constant agenda to be best friends with everybody in Portland. That's cool.
Yeah.
And
She's a good friend.
she is a good friend, and I like it is cool. This has not been on purpose, but we have had a lot of really awesome Portland guests, and this is one of the reasons why we love living here. So there's a lot of cool collaborative stuff going on, and hopefully we can all hang out in person. Maybe we'll even have XR Talk happy hours, like legit one day. Is a dream.
Yeah, no, we're
Safe
definitely going to
future.
have a COVID-19 after party when this is done.
with projection mapped visuals.
Hell
to
yes!
add to the scene.
Yeah, and drones all over the place, and yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Like, I think we covered people's questions. Was there anything else you wanted to plug or anything that we didn't get to? I mean, we pretty much covered your whole professional life.
Yeah. A good spectrum.
Should we get into
there.
your personal life?
Yeah. No, it's been good. I mean, like, I think it's always interesting across the board seeing how people how they get to where they are, because I think especially within this industry, it's not a clean path. You don't go to school for experience design, because I didn't get that rant out there yet, but it's interesting, and I think everyone's different multi backgrounds make it a more interesting industry and types of works in general. Like, I can teach someone how to use a Lightform or Mad Map or projection mapping, but then it comes into what content and like how you're actually going to make something with it, and what story you're trying to tell for a client or for your own narrative or vision or whatever you have. So I think that's the most exciting part is sharing this knowledge and then seeing how people's unique experiences turn into the works that they make. So
I mean, honestly, like when Spencer and I talked about first starting to do the show, it was really like, we want to talk about real stuff, like how you actually make the stuff. And the part that because we've been in this world for several years now, the part that kind of our community has brought to us is like, how do you build a career around this? And so that's why a lot of my questions, I try to bring them back, because I've come to realize that, this is a burgeoning field, and we all came in through really interesting paths. And and now that we've had, multiple guests in a row, we never even planned to have guests, but now that we've had multiple guests in a row, we're starting to see really common threads. I mean, like, we all have these really interesting backgrounds, and I think that's why we all hit it off as friends too. Like, I mean, I think there's something to that, where we're all kind of like-minded, but it's hard to put a pin on exactly what that is. We're curious, we're creative, we're not afraid of technology, but we want to build things that people enjoy. And I like how you said it, like, we want to tell stories or express a thought in a non-traditional way. And I never really thought about that until we started doing this. So thank you for being a part of that process. Yeah. And
this has been fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I had no idea how I love the Neon Museum story where you just cold emailed them. You're like, hey, you're cool. I'm cool. Let's do something.
Let's be cool together.
Yeah. I would just say, like, I mean, even on that note, like, I've definitely seen, like, as long as you're authentic and genuine about like your intentions and clear on like what you're trying to do, and looking at how both sides can benefit, or if it's of no issue to that, like I have Courtney Carroll, who works at the museum, to thank as well, because she vouched for me, knew what projection mapping was, and was like, "No, this is cool. Like, let's see what this nerd has to do." So
It's
giving
art
other people
dork.
those legs up,
Right.
and
Well,
yeah,
and
that's all part of it.
you point. There's another. Actually, it's a big part of it, which is relationships and helping each other out, and that's
That's
what that
huge.
that really that does bring it back to the intent of the show. The intent of the show is to show that like um, there are people working on, like, you're not alone in trying to figure out this stuff. And when we do see an opportunity, like I get a huge high out of connecting people and helping people, and
Yeah.
like it's all about that. So as much as the tech, people want to get into tools and tech and code and all this stuff, and that is a part of it. But like authenticity, being genuinely curious and collaborative, it gets you way further, right? So maybe
I
that's
remember when I was at Magic Leap and somebody pointed out a talk that I gave at a junior college down in California, and it was and one of the things that I really stressed was you can be really really good at what you do and not be nice to people, and you won't do well. And so, like, kind of one of the main things of my talk was, just get along with people, and you'll do really well. I mean, you can actually be kind of mediocre at what you do, but if if you get along with people and you're nice to them, and you help them.
I'm gonna coin a second. So first of all, let's give Todd Little credit for coining Brixels, because that happened.
Yeah.
That happened today, and I'm gonna do a second one. Like, the term humble brag. I think there's such a thing as humble swag, and I think we have it. I think we
Humble swag.
Yeah, like I think we know how to. We know we can do stuff and we can be helpful, but we're not like jerks about it. We have humble swag.
But here's what I have to say about this. The end of this story was that somebody at Magic Leap, when I was just kind of towards the end of my career there, mentioned that they had seen this thing, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's how you got to where you are. Is you were just you just sucked up to people." And I was like, "Oh no!"
Well, no, that only gets you so far. That only gets you so far. Humble.
But it's not what I was trying to say.
You actually got to be good.
That's right. That's the humble swag part. Yeah. Thanks so much, Craig. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it, even though Spencer had some weird chip on his shoulder about your Las Vegas experience that he had,
oh my god,
that he had to unload.
It was actually really good. I had my very best Vegas experience there because I didn't go to the main strip.
That's fair.
I went to Old Town. And Old Town was amazing. I had never been there before.
I will like being a friend of Craig, and like obviously lurking on his Instagram because I called him out on his South of France adventures. But if you want to know the cool things to do in Las Vegas, Craig's got some tips. There is some cool. It's like how we found the cool stuff in Fort Lauderdale when we got to South Florida, and we're like, "What is this place?" And if you dig hard enough, there's a layer of actually cool stuff to do, and I think Craig's got that list for Las Vegas.
Yeah, definitely start with Old Town.
Yeah,
right. A lot of good food. Yeah, start in downtown, go to Atomic Liquors, and work your way from there.
Nice. All right. Well.
All right. So how are we going to do our?
Craig. We do a poster frame for your video, and so right now, you're in the 3-column layout. I could probably stop Spencer's screen share so you can see.
Yeah, stop my screen so I can see what I'm doing. You're going to reverse me. I'm going to be the other direction.
Can you see? Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see that.
So we've got to come up with a frame for the video. We've done.
Oh yeah.
We've done the cross high five. We can do it again. We've done hear no evil, see no evil. We've done.
Wait, this one.
Arms.
I don't know.
We could. What? Oh wait.
I don't know.
We can be prop hands. We just have to figure out the mirrored view.
It's so weird because this is my.
That's right. You're right.
Yeah.
I think we should play off the fact that Spencer opened the show with just being really grumpy about Craig. So Yeah.
Oh wait, over there.
Yeah. I'll just be like, oh, what's going on? Oh,
Wait.
yeah. Be mad. Oh, shake your fist. There. Okay, that's probably good enough.
I'm sure.
So silly. Thanks so much, everyone. We chat during the week on chat.xrtalk.net, which is on Discord. Watch.xrtalk.net gets you to our channel. If you subscribe and set your reminders, you'll get a notification when we go live. So like this week when we didn't stream on Wednesday like we normally do, you would have been fine and you wouldn't be mad at me, Estella, for not streaming on a Wednesday.
What is real?
You would just get a reminder. And it helps us out too. I think we're up almost to 150 subscribers, which, is modest, but cool. Because really, we're not doing it for a bunch of subscribers. Hopefully everybody got something out of it. The Lightform, we will put all kinds of links. I'm going to link to Alicia's talk, Craig's Light Capsules videos, Mad Mapper, Brilliant at the Neon Museum, and we will have all the links in the show notes. So thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you
for giving us all your time. Can't wait to see you back in Portland.
I'd like to give a shout out to all of our leaper pals out there who are suddenly adrift in the world, and we love you. And
we'll figure out something to do with a bunch of Magic Leap alumni very soon.
Well, just like reach out to Paul or to me. If you want to come up and hang out in Portland, it's a pretty good place.
Once it's okay to hang out in person with each other.
Once it's okay to hang out. Well, there's fewer zombies here. We have a flatter curve. So.
Thanks, everyone. I want to sign off.